The button has been pushed. Hello and welcome. What's up, guys? We're back again. Hope you enjoyed our last episode with Spafford, and we're coming at you with another incredible show this week because I have none other than Marc Brownie Brownstein with us from the Disco Biscuits, from DJ Brownie, from Electro, from anything. If you don't know who fucking Brownie is, you have not been in the scene long enough. What's going on, Brownie?
How is it going with you? Great intro. That's a nice. That's it's like it gives people an out like at the end where they can be like, no, I never heard of him. I must not have been in the scene long enough. You know?
Dude, you are literally like one of the founding fathers of like Jamtronica, right? So like there's no way, I don't care how fucking old you are, right? Like even if you're like a young buck 16-year-old that's just getting in the scene, you should always spend your time looking at foundational music. And
Yeah.
if you're not part of the fucking foundation, Brownie, I don't know who is.
Yeah, for sure. And what I'm finding out as I get out on the road, which is kind of cool, is that you know it was foundational. Like we're out and I'm out and about, and every band that we play with, somebody in that band is like, oh man, when I was 15 years old, I was going to see Biscuit shows. 15 years ago, and I heard that from. I heard that from Cotter, from Goose. One of the dudes in the special was like, talking about the biscuits that way. And there's Karina Reichman tells me that exact thing, like that exact. She's always like, I was 15 when I went and saw my first biscuit show, and so
I
there's
was 15 too. It was the year 2000, and I'll never fucking forget it, man, because like what you guys were doing was completely different, right? And like now there's a whole genre that follows it, but you were groundbreaking, and like it was amazing. And then as like a fucking young kid to see that, you're just like, what the fuck? Like it was mesmerizing. It's insane. And that's why I'm so stoked to have you on, because like I want to pick into the fucking brain of Brownie and like how the fuck did it happen? Like for those of you that don't know, like you guys got together in 95 at UPenn in Philadelphia, right?
yeah, yeah. That's what happened. We got together in Philadelphia and UPenn, and then we started playing. But it wasn't that. It was like not about from 95 to like 97 is when we went from sounding like I don't know, let's call it like classic jam band, like a 1.0 like rock influenced jam band, to where slowly electronic music became more and more and more like a part, and continues through our whole career to become more and more a part of the fabric of what we do. But it was the years before we started 93 and 94 95 where we were like listening to tons of electronic music, and we at that time we were listening to kind of goa trance and psychedelic trance music, and we were introduced to it by friends from college who like lived in the UK and had like connections with people who were in the goa trance scene, like specifically Simon Posford
So like
was
go India, right?
at the time. Well, Goa, India, yeah, that's where like the scene was based around, the psychedelic trance scene. They would like interchangeably call it Goa trance or psychedelic trance. But like some of the artists, like hallucinogen and infected mushroom, some of the artists were from infected mushroom. I think is from Israel, and hallucinogen I think is Simon Posford. He's from the UK. So a lot of the artists were like from different places internationally, but there was this scene of parties in Goa that were like out on the beach, that this like scene of music was based around. That why they called it Goa trance. But Simon Posford, who's still now out there, and like now he's on his like, solo tour, which incorporates hallucinogen, which is what we were listening to then, and also then eventually Spangle. The next couple years after that, he kind of morphed from doing hallucinogen into doing Spangle in like the kind of later, so like earlier end of that was hallucinogen. And so that music had a really transformational effect on the Disco Biscuits in general, just because from the standpoint of like it just seeps into you. Like, it's like there was times where I was just like on Fish Tour and just seeing so many Fish shows and listening to so many Fish shows, and like I would not be listening to music, and jam band style jams would just play in my head. You know what I mean? I was like just hearing the music in
So
my head.
you were birthing it inside, in between your ears, before you had actually put it to your fingertips and started putting it out there.
I think like not intentionally, that's just what happens. It's like you listen to something so much that even when you're not listening to it, you hear it, right? And so like we were listening to two very distinct kinds of music. You know, we were listening to Fish and the Grateful Dead and the Allman Brothers, and then we were listening to hallucinogen and GMS and like infected mushroom, and then a little bit later like reed speed and DB and like the whole like Wally and the whole like New York City based drum and bass scene. Which, but these were like early. It was so early there wasn't really a market for this stuff in the United States yet. Even like the drum and bass stuff, they would play at clubs with like a couple hundred people at it in New York City, and these were like huge drum and bass shows. So now like Sub Focus is headlining like the O2 Arena or something, and,
Yeah,
and playing
these
it like.
fucking huge shows. But back in the mid '90s, we didn't. Al Gore didn't invent the internet yet, right? So like you were for. I mean, I turned 40 in August, so I'm older. But I remember like going to shows with my brother where it was like you didn't know what was happening until like a couple hours before. It was like, hey, go to this warehouse or go to this place and show up and just be there. And like you didn't have the power. Like there's tapers and things like that. So like how are you guys finding out about this? Like being part of the scene, just like you said, people from Europe bringing it over, and then were you looking for it?
We were throwing parties, and like the parties were the band was playing from 8 till like 11:30 or midnight. We would just play like 4 hours of psychedelic rock music, and then at midnight we would stop and the DJs would take over, and they would go from like midnight until 6 a.m. And these were like the first parties. Like this was on like Penn's campus in like 19 like 90 or something, 1993, we 94, like we were in like the basement of these houses, and we would throw these like long like 14 hour 14-hour parties, 10-hour parties where it was just like jam band music, trance music, jam band music, like electronic, like psychedelic music. And so it became like that music started to be this music that you start hearing in your head. You know what I mean? It's like we got to where we were listening to, so we would finish our show 95, 96, and then we would listen to trance music in the house that we would play and practice in until 6 a.m. And so now when you wake up in the morning and whatever song is stuck in your head, it's like from like loops of electronic music, right? And so now when you're out on stage, you're more inclined to have that be what's playing in your head, and what's playing in your head ultimately is what comes out on your fingers, right? And so little by little what was playing in our heads started to change, and then ultimately on stage it became its own genre. And I think in fairness to STS9, they like were simultaneously inventing the same kind of music like a couple of years after us. Like we were like 97 and they were like 99, but like they didn't they discovered us out on the road playing shows and had already kind of touched on this thing. So, it was like collective. But, yeah, we so far as I know, outside of like stuff like Kraftwerk, or other like very early like these or like late 70s like electronic music from Europe. Certainly in the United States, the Biscuits were the first band that was playing that kind of sound. It was really cool. People maybe like take it for granted a little bit now because there's so many bands out
For
there. But
sure.
you're like, if you're discovering music in 2018 or 2022 or 2025, you're like 15 then, now, and you're discovering this scene. You go and like, like
No, there's a catalog of it all.
every one of the bands at some point does this. Even like String Cheese Incident has their like moments where they go into like four on the floor, and we watched that. Like we saw the first times that started to happen, like 6 years later or something, and like we watched String Cheese like adopt like new different techniques and styles over the years, which was cool. But then like hosts and hosts of like younger jam bands from Spafford, like you mentioned earlier, to Goose has like plenty of songs that kind of have that feel on and on. Like so many of the bands maybe don't do only that, but like everybody kind of touches on it, which is how it's like kind of accepted in the, in the genre at large, as part of just the language of jam bands, you
Sure.
know.
And so, like, you're sitting there and you're hearing the music. How long had you been playing the bass before you started doing it? And how was it for you to try to, like, put it to your fingers, as you say?
Yeah, that's a great question. I started playing bass on keyboards, ironically,
Get the fuck
because
out of here,
yeah, because
really?
I was in a band in we were like it's like elementary school, like we were like a band. It was really like seventh grade, but we were friends in sixth grade, and then it was the same school that went from fifth grade all the way to 12th. And so we were like kind of somewhere in middle school, and we wanted to start a band, but everybody played keyboards. Like that was the age, like we were all like 11. Like only like the only instrument that any like of these kids played yet was piano. So three of us were, and then there was a drummer, right? There's three piano players. So like we split the music up into like different parts on the keyboard, and I got the bass part. And it was like weird at the time. There's like a point where it's like, oh shit, I'm playing the keyboard. I'm playing the bass on the keyboard. I need to like, to be legitimate, I need to be on the bass. This isn't even like legitimate. It's like just like one note on the keyboard. It's like whatever. But then, I come to find out as I get older and older that, 80 to 90% of the music that was being produced and put out on the radio that I was listening to at that time was all keyboard based, tons and tons and tons of keyboard based. So, it became later down the line, a skill. Actually, Dave Murphy of STS9 like started to like play keyboards on stage pretty often, actually, in like the early like thousands when like they were blowing up. And it just like sounded sick. I remember it being like, this sounds sick. And that was why I got my first keyboard to bring out on stage. And then like as that goes on and on. Like, the further into my career I go, the more it takes me back to where I actually started. But we were like Depeche Mode meets The Doors. We were an all Doors cover band and called Fearful Symmetry, and we had three keyboards. And it was like if Depeche Mode was a bunch of 11-year-olds and they were playing Doors songs. And then in like 6 months into it, like we got a guitar player. We kicked out one of the other we like kept the best keyboard player. We hired a guitar player. I went over to bass, and we took ourselves way too seriously. We like fired a guy. We were in like eighth grade, and we were like, sorry dude,
Like, you're not good enough,
we're
bro. You gotta go.
we're gonna take this band to the next level, like, like fucking Fearful Symmetry for life, and like every now and then I'll see that dude too, like, because yeah, it's like he's still around. He lives in like Connecticut, and like, he'll pop up at a show or like at a lunch or like a reunion or something, and
And
I'll
I
just
feel
look
like
at him and I'll
fearful.
be like, what the fuck were we, why did we think that we needed to fire this poor guy? He's such a sweetheart. He became the sound guy, like what I mean, he wasn't like out of the band totally. He just
It just
went from
wasn't
like,
much anything. He wasn't playing the keys anymore.
he went from third keyboard player to like first sound guy, like taping, like crew member. It's a demotion. It's a fucking demotion. You were in the band, and but like not like some people. Like I knew a bass player, a famous bass player, who I don't want to like put him on blast, but he's a famous bass player in our scene, and he like started driving buses. He got a bus and became like a bus driver for like Snoop Dogg or something. It was like a big artist, and was like making more money than he was making when he was the bass player of this fairly large touring band. And so, there are
which is fucking wild. But like, if something happened and it was taken away from you tomorrow, and you couldn't do anything with music because free time should fear you because you're fucking constantly busy, right? And there's a music project of all sorts that you're constantly working on. But like, if
Yeah.
you couldn't, what the fuck would you do, right?
Well, I
Because like,
don't do well. I don't do well. I don't do well with long periods of time without like working. You know what I mean? Like, and there's like healthy balance and times where like you could be home and like working at home and spending time, at home with the fam or like, all of that. But I start to get super antsy after like 2 weeks, and like there's like a couple things you can do. The number one thing you can do is like when you start to get antsy, immediately start writing music. That's like the number one thing. Sometimes it takes like a week when from being like fully off, like a week back, and it's like okay, went to the gym every day, like da da da, and then you're like time to like work, and you start writing. You know, you still
but that
hear me?
like you have so many side projects, right? Like not
Yeah,
only do you have the biscuits, right? Like
yeah, Electron.
yeah, you have Electro, dude. You have DJ Brown. You have
Conspirator. Well, DJ Brownie's, this is the failsafe because now, like, God forbid, I don't even want to say, like, something happened and I couldn't play bass or, like, whatever it is. Like, I could DJ, you know? You only need one hand to DJ, really. People use two, but, like, you only really need one. And so, and probably not even that. So, it's like, DJing's a great, I love DJing. It's such a great gig. Like, I love being on tour by myself or with one person. It's easy to get around. Moving the Disco Biscuits like
there's a lot
organization around is like it's hard.
for
You have to
sure.
find everybody. Like you
Yeah.
have to find everybody and make sure that they're like on the bus before you leave.
And
That's
not
not always
one and done, just in and out. But so what was the transition? What made you start focusing? Because I mean, obviously you
on
do,
DJ.
yeah, on DJing. What was it that was drawing it to you? Because I
So
remember
I'll
listening
tell you
to,
why.
I think it was Jam Duck or something. I listened to a podcast where you're like, oh, Jam Cruise had reached out to me or whatever, and like you had basically said like I wasn't even doing it, and now this is like what you're fucking doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Jam Cruise just was like, "You want to DJ?" And I was like, "All right, I'll learn how to DJ." You know what? What really was like the thing was my son had learned how to DJ, and then he like had the gear. And then I like bought him better gear, but he then stopped. He switched over to drums and stopped wanting to DJ. And so there was like this gear was sitting there, and I was like, it was fairly expensive for as like DJ starter gear goes. And so I was like, all right, let me like figure it out. I went on the tutorial on YouTube and like watched a couple tutorials and then I was like, all right, I definitely could do this. Like, and so I got back in touch with them and was like, let's do it. First of all, when I look back at my first DJ show on Jam Cruise, it was a fucking disaster. It was a truly I had no idea what I was doing. I thought it was gonna be easy to DJ. It's not easy to DJ. Like maybe there's ways now, but like the way that I was doing it was not easy. Everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong. Like, there's no way to not know that I was doing it live because it did not sound good. And I couldn't make any of the beats match. It's like, I'm not against using like the sync button when you're DJing, where, there's like a whole thing in the DJ world. Are you allowed to like use the sync button? The sync button makes it so that the tracks are
Well,
perfectly lined up with each other and you don't have to like use the wheel to like get the beats lined up exactly. At first it's kind of hard to get the beats lined up. Like it's hard to know like which track is ahead and which one's behind and which way to move the wheel, and it's like you're in the middle of it, you're playing, like there's one track already going, like you only have like a minute and 45 seconds until that one's over and this one's not lined up yet, and you're
there's a
like
clock counting down over your shoulder. No,
I'm not opposed to somebody in like the heat of battle who's just like struggling to like get it to work, like hitting the sync button and just moving on with their day and being like, all right, now that one's lined up. Let me make the mix. The crowd doesn't fucking care. Like all that it matters is like how it sounds to the crowd is
but
clean.
then the creatives bitch, right? Like you can talk about like Trey's singing or Rick's auto tune or whatever he's using, and like people complain, right? Like that's just for some fucking reason, fans, no matter what scene it is in music, will find a reason to bitch. And then the people that are making it feel like they get to like stick their nose up, like, oh well, I know better. And it's like, what the fuck?
You know, I'm giving the people who are just starting out right now a pass and saying like, hey, use that sync button. If like you're in, if you're only using it and you're not trying to learn how to match the beats, then that's a different story. Then you're like missing the point of like what like the actual skill is in mixing music. It's like
But you're
this.
saying to have a safety blanket, it's still okay.
It's fine if if you're like learning and like try. You'll get some of them in, right? Like try to like get to use the wheel and get them in, and but like sometimes like there was like I didn't even know. First of all, I didn't even know how to use the sync button in my first like couple of DJ sets. Like I was like that much didn't know about DJing that like there's this thing that could have like fail safed me through the whole entire sets, and I had no idea about it. Like I'm like if there's like real DJs around though, like if you're like DJing at Halloween
Yeah, no,
on like the Spirit of whatever lake stage, and like Walker and Royce are like hanging out kind of on the side, like setting up their shit. Like you cannot use the fucking sync button. It doesn't matter what's you're like. You better hope at that point, and I got to this point. You better hope that at that point you are 100% sure that you know which wheel needs to move and in which direction it needs to move, and like you just use your touch and get that shit lined up, because you got about 18 to 24 mixes in a row right now where you're doing it the right way, authentic beat matching. But it's CDJs are the industry standard, and it's like I think like if you're like out there, um like it's just like do what you have to do and have a good time, but as long as you keep pushing yourself and kind of learning. So for me, I had no idea what I was doing, and then like you get offered like other shows, like, oh, do you want to DJ it like this? I DJ'd in the lobby at Fish at the Wells Fargo Center in Philly. I had no idea. I was using like I've had like some DJ gigs where I had to just use iTunes because like I didn't like it happened too fast and I didn't have my gear and I couldn't get the shit to work or whatever. But like whatever, like however the music comes out, the music comes out. But like little by little, you start to like learn all of the buttons do, and you like start to figure out which way to turn the wheel, and like suddenly you can't even barely remember how when you started out none of this shit came so easy. It's like people think it's easy, but it's not easy. It really does take a lot of time. So to that, the reason I'm playing so many DJ shows right now is the more shows I play, the better I get by like a lot. It's like I can set my CDJs and do set them up in like a studio setting and like practice in that way. But like let's be honest, like it's like the hitting the road, getting on stage and like learning what works in front of people. Like, like learning how like what songs work, what songs don't work. You'll if you become a DJ, you'll get to that moment where you drop a song and you can see the floor draining.
yeah.
Like, people walking away. And so, I started doing it more, and then it just was like a thing. It was like DJ Brownie became a thing to where it's like
It's a fucking thing, buddy. It's a thing.
I keep it simple. I've made some original songs. I haven't released them yet, but like I do play them occasionally. But like I'm mostly just like DJing, and so here's what I think. It's the more I do it, the more I know about music. Like, it's like the more the and like the like I get to bring this into all of my acts. Like I get to bring it into like producing. I get to bring it back into the biscuits. It's like I'm like playing bass lines all night. Like I'm listening to this music all night. So just like at the beginning of our career where we're listening to psychedelic trance, it's like I'm listening to like tech house and garage and like and drum and bass, and like those bass lines that are in the music that's current right now start to like they bounce around in your head, right? And then you have like a way to outlet them either on keyboard, a lot of times on keyboard, because that's like the sound you're going for when you're listening to this music, but oftentimes on bass too. So yeah, DJ Brownie, it's like it's a great outlet. It's nice to have. So the other reason is this: people have like acoustic solo or like acoustic duo. Like you could go and like play like acoustic sets, like solo shows. Like Magner has a solo show and a duet with Barber, and Barber's got a solo show as a duet and his own solo show, which is like guitar and computer and like mixers and stuff. And so, you know, when I started DJing, I realized like as a bass player, probably this would be like my best bet for like what my solo show or solo tour would look like. You know, it was like if I'm ever going to go and play solo, it's not going to be like me with a bass and like a computer and like vocals and like it's just like that's not what it was ever going to be. So, and it was I've done acoustic shows, but like that's I'm not like Barber's better at that than I am because I don't really play guitar professionally like he does. I can get by, but like I wanted to like be able to like have 3 months off. Somebody in the band's having a baby, and I got 3 months off, and I could play like 15 shows and like not have to like figure out who's in the band. Right?
Yeah.
Like, you part of the reason we have like so many different bands, like so many side projects, is because like sometimes I'll be like, oh, we Electron has an offer to play somewhere. Oh well, Lotus is on tour. Tommy J Rad's on tour, right? Okay, well, so those dates are out. When's J Rad available? They're only available for like 5 weeks, starting in September 1st to October 8th. Okay, well, Lotus is on tour all of September, and the Biscuits are on tour all of September. So, all right, well, October seems to be the only date that we could do Electron. Let's just flag that, throw it on October 7th. And like now I'm back to this thing that is supposed to be in May. And, you know, and it's like, all right, what are we going to do here? Like, is it going to be like maybe we could do the family band if like Aggie's not on tour, or like we could. So all these projects have people that are like have like very busy schedules like that. It's really hard to pin down like open weekends for Aggie at this stage in their career. They're just on tour constantly, and when they're not, they're in the studio, and then when they're not, like they have like a couple weeks off to relax. Like, do they want to go back out on tour? So it's a weekend like that hops up over the next 10 months that we can play in that family band. And so I'm always putting other things together. Like I just played with Mike Ganser the other day up in Syracuse. You know Mike Ganser, the aqueous guitarist,
Yes.
and Ben Atkin from Houseplant.
Yeah.
I said formerly of Goose on one
Yeah,
of
I
my.
know. I fucking saw your video. I was like, God damn it,
I
Brownie.
said that, and he's like, you can just say Houseplant now, and I was like, all right, I'm not up on I'm not that up on social media.
No, for sure. And all the bullshit, right? And tiptoeing.
So we went and did the show, the three of us with these other new dudes, Dan Cohn and Jared Cohen from Bad Shrimp or Big Shrimp, or they've changed their name. Dudes,
Yeah.
don't come down on me for not knowing which shrimp it is, because when you go and change your name at this point in your career, like you gotta expect that dudes like me are gonna be a little confused about it. So you're some kind of shrimp. I know that. I'm down. Like Jared Sage band. Jared is a beast guitarist, but the five of us got together and played in Syracuse. Particularly was excited and had wanted to play with Mike Ganser for a very long time. I was always like impressed with his playing, and it was cool. Like he was another one who was like, "Oh, let's do World of Spinning." Like he was like immediately throwing in like ideas of like what biscuits he wanted to get
I just wanted
in
to play.
on.
Fucking awesome.
We just had really good chemistry together too. And so like at some point I want to do that. Like here's what I want to do, because it is a lot of things. I would like it to be to where all of the different bands that I play with eventually I have enough of a stature, like you say, like it's been 30 years. I'm getting to stature territory. Maybe not quite 35 years. We're still around and kicking it. Like maybe I could get into the stature where I could be like O'Teal and friends, Phil and friends, Brownie and Friends, and I could just do Brownie and Friends every time. It's like whether it's like my kid and the two dudes from Aggie. Like I don't want to. I'm not suggesting I'm stealing Brownstein Family Band or whatever. I'm just at some point in my life want to streamline, like if it's Tommy and Mike, it's electron, style,
For sure.
and like if it's like Machete, like we could do like all of the different groups with like different vibes and different flavors, but just like under one umbrella. If I ever achieve that stature,
That is the status that you're looking for.
that's the goal. I'm looking for the status that I could just roll them all into Brownie and Friends, and then all the friends would be like, respectful and like, oh, yes, like this makes
Understand? Yeah,
sense.
it's just
Here's
picking
a
up
guy
like
who has
so.
15 different brands that are like,
Yes.
it's all over the place, but he has gained the stature to roll it all into.
So like foie gras and crumpets would have been like
That'd be like Brownie and Friends. Well, that actually started as Cotter and Friends.
really.
So you know how Cotter has his Cotter and
Yeah,
Friends
yeah,
thing
for
he
sure.
does?
Because he had done that up in Vermont.
Got it. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. He's got a serious stature right now. He's the guy's in Goose. So Cotter and Friends did his thing like a couple different times. We saw that for sure. And then he was like had Goose was playing down there. You still hear me?
Yep, yep, yep. I still got you.
I
Sorry, somebody's probably calling my phone.
That's all
Fucked
good.
up.
So Cotter Goose was playing in New Orleans for Jazz Fest, and like Cotter, I guess I don't even know if he knew this or it was we have the same manager, but like somebody like was like, well, maybe we'll do like to me, not Cotter. Somebody in the middle who works with both of us said maybe we'll do like a Cotter and Friends, and you and Magner can come down and play with him. And I was like, oh, that's great. Like, let me know. You know what I mean? And then it actually, the Friends, when we put it together, ended up being basically all of Goose with me and Magner. And so we changed the branding into this Foie Gras and Crumpets, which was the same guy that works with both of us kind of, I think, may have even come up with that particular one. But yeah, so that was Cotter and Friends. But yes, the same thing. Like it could be Brownie and Friends, then like it would be, Ken Cotter and Peter one time, and we just go back and forth between my songs and their songs, and that would be like one version of it. We're guys, if Goose ever comes across this footage, you know what I mean? Only if I am to eventually obtain that stature that we could do this. I'm not suggesting Fall Guy and Crumpets becomes Brownie and Friends. I'm saying
No,
we're
but that fucking set was amazing, Brownie. Like that shit,
yeah, it was great.
man, it was fucking beautiful. And like
Thank you.
for some reason, like Goose is the band that people like to shit on. And then like even Frasco, a friend of both of ours, right? He's like, Brandy's Brian, the Biscuits are practicing again, like fucking like actually showing like what you guys are doing. But you are putting out such good fucking music, man. Like
It's
you are
called practice.
yes, dude, it's fucking
It's called
insane.
practice. Well, I funny enough, I saw an interview of me 10 years or like 15 years ago, like was just happened to be on some feed, some social media feed, and it popped up. And in the interview, a young me, at a time where the Biscuits were flourishing and having a great like run, I said, listen, we've been working our asses off like really, really hard for the last 4 years, and like invariably, like if you put in that much work, you ultimately eventually will start to see the fruit of that labor. And so for us, and like whatever it was, 1999 through 2003, with a couple of little bumps in the road, but we saw a lot of fruits from the labor of 97, 98, 99, and like 2000, 2001. We worked so hard in those 5 years, and by like 2002, 3, we we're really seeing huge massive growth. And then same thing with like after Alan came in 2000, late 2006 and 2007, worked so hard. 2007, I've come to find out is a favorite of Biscuit fans. Like, people talk about 2008 and late 2008, which I think late 2008 was the game changer. And 2009 to me, that was the fruit of all of that hard work from 2006, 7, and 8 was like late 8 into like 9 when the band really started to be back at our musical peak that we had been at 10 years earlier, really. And then again this time around, like we took off a long break of really putting in any hard work outside of just showing up, practicing for a couple hours and then getting on stage and playing our shows, and we did a lot of cool shit in those years, 2011 to 2019. There was a lot of great shows. People always say like, wait, like that's the area that the Biscuits sucked in. Like that's like those were like the 9 years my first 9 years of going to shows. Like
And I
that
picked
was,
him up for sure.
and so like so there was all kinds of great shit in 2015, 2016, 17. There was great lots of great shows, not with the same consistency that we have and never actually with the consistency. The Biscuits are playing now in 20 late 2023 all through 24 and the first half of 25 with the consistency that we'd never really been at that level before. And so like, we'd always play like a bad show every 3 shows or like an average show, like something that wasn't like, it's like you gotta come on tour 5 nights, you'll get the magic. Like, if you go all 5 nights there'll be 2 or 3 that were like great and one that's just like the best show you ever saw.
Your Cervantes show in, I think it's February here in Denver, was fucking off the hook. And it's not just the music, because I also feel like your guys' laser game and the backdrop to your stage has also like leveled up as well with you guys.
Yeah. This year you mean
Yeah, this year.
the mission show?
Yeah, it's the mission. Sorry, not Cervantes. Fuck.
All right,
Yeah,
yeah.
the mission
I'm
show.
like, when
Yeah.
did I play Cervantes?
No, no,
I
not
played it so
Cervantes.
many times. Are we talking
Yes.
about
No, no, no.
2004?
I've seen you at Cervantes too. You are 1,000% correct. It was at the
Okay.
fucking.
So
It's
the
the.
mission
It
show
was the
was
other.
like it was like to me, like that moment was the culmination, hopefully the first of many culminations of like the 3 years of really hard work that we put in. It was like, and I said that and made like this comment about like, oh, like if you're gonna like put your head down and work your ass off for 3, 4 years straight, like you're gonna eventually start to see like the results like in some way or shape. It's if you're super consistent with how you eat, you're going to see the results in your body. If you're super consistent with how you work out, like consistent over 3 years, 4 years, you're going to see the results of that. If you're consistent with how much you practice your instrument or your craft, like your bass or whatever your craft is, painting or whatever, if you do it every day a little bit every single day, after 3 or 4 years you're going to notice massive improvements in your craft. And so for us it's the same thing with like just like putting our heads down and writing songs for like 3 years straight and like just like putting in so much work, more work on like writing music than we've put in since, really. I mean, we've been more successful in getting the songs into the rotation than we had been in like 2000, like 2001, 1998, 99, 2000, 2001, where there was just like 20 new songs a year,
Yeah,
25 new
you
songs
guys
a
are.
year. We
And
haven't
Trent,
had that. So writing 20 or 25 songs, it's fucking hard. It takes a long time. It's a lot of work went into these 40 or so songs. Like we're still writing. So it's
what does
still,
that process look for you guys when you guys are writing these songs nowadays?
I mean, it's different. There's different ways. Like we have a batch of songs that are kind of about to hit that were made through like, I write some of these songs on like my songs. I'll write like on a ukulele or like an acoustic guitar, and then I'll go on Ableton and I'll make like an electronic version of it, like as a demo with like vocals and all of the different instruments, so that I could then give like a fully fleshed out demo to the band so that they could then learn it from there. Sometimes a lot of the newer songs we start like in the end we have forever. There was like a Save the Robots jam from Raleigh last year, and it had this like bass groove in it that was like moving through these cool changes. And they just grabbed that and like put it into like Ableton, and then they like took it off of the bass and put it on like an electronic bass, and where they could like then write new bass lines, but
That's fucking sick.
based
So
off
they
of
took
that.
it from the jam, from your
They took
guys.
my bass line, they put it in, and they mimicked it on an instrument that was in like a keyboard, and then they like tweaked it, and that became like the verse of the song. And then from there they used that sound that they had used to like mimic my bass for the verse, and wrote new changes for the chorus and for the bridge and stuff. And so it started with just like a bass line from a jam, and then it turned into like a whole song in the studio. And we've had like dozens of songs that were written that way, where just like one little part of it came from this jam. Or sometimes, Under Your Spell, like the whole musical section came from like a Biscuits jam from Mishawaka, Hot Air Balloon Mishawaka jam. And like it's basically note for note like how we played the song. We just kind of wrote lyrics over it. So that happens too. Sometimes it's just on acoustic guitar, and and you just bring it to the band that way, and everybody like learns their parts or like helps write parts around it. Sometimes it starts with lyrics, sometimes it starts with a melody, sometimes it starts with chord changes, sometimes it starts with the jam, and it's just like going through that songwriting process. I've been teaching songwriting recently, and I have a bunch of students right now, and one of them is, it's a songwriting kind of sessions, and it's pretty much my favorite ones that I do right now. Like it's like my favorite lessons that I give, is where like there's so much goes into like writing a song like that. When you start to actually break it down with somebody, it's like, okay, like these lyrics, like they could be better. Where do we start? Like every line needs like 10 alternates, right? So they go back to the drawing board, and like, but then there's like, what's the melody? Like maybe it's against, maybe it started as a melody. So what are the words, right? And like, then like you want to hone it in. Like you want to, if you ever heard Pink Floyd's like demos, there's like, they're available online, like where you can
Yeah.
hear like Comfortably Numb, but like the demo version, and
But
like the
before
lyrics,
uncomfortably numb. Yes,
like,
exactly.
and like the lyrics aren't good. Like some of them are the
Yeah,
lyric.
you have some of those hits, but you're right. There's a lot of mud in between it, right? But that's what's so cool is like for you, you're mastering your craft, but then by teaching it, you're learning even more too. So then do you feel like you're leveling up as a songwriter
I
because of
have to. Here, look, this is what's on my desk right now. Writing better lyrics. Like, if I'm going to give lessons on how to write better lyrics, I better damn well know how to write better lyrics. You know what I mean? And it's
for
like,
sure.
for me though, I have a system that it's more like I'm teaching a system, right? Because it's like, this is a great book, but like it's like a very like long and drawn out, like basically book of exercises of like, 20 pages of like how to make a great metaphor, like 20 pages of how to find a great rhyme. And like I've talked for hours with my student about how to find a great rhyme, and like how to avoid what I call is lazy songwriting, like where you like are going for the lowest common denominator rhyme, like, and it's just like it makes people hear the rhyme and think like almost like it's like Dr. Seuss or something. Like, it's just like I push my students to like go deeper and like find like things that rhyme, not completely like perfect rhymes, not like vowels but not consonants and stuff, and like sounds that sound a lot alike. I'll play them that video of Eminem talking about how he gets pissed off when people say that nothing rhymes with orange because his like door hinge, like he goes through like a series of things that kind
Yeah,
of rhyme with orange if you like stretch them and say them a certain way. And so like I'm teaching kind of that mentality of like, rhyming in the middle of sentences and the end of sentences, or rhyming longer phrases, or like making like things that rhyme but you don't think about the rhyme. It's like it rhymes enough that you never said, oh, he rhymed this with that, but you never also said, oh, that didn't rhyme.
for
Like it
sure.
never takes you out of, like sometimes like a rhyme scheme can take you out of the content of what the story is, right? And so that's another thing we talk about a lot in songwriting, is like storytelling, like how to tell a story, how to like set up a story. Maybe you were writing about yourself but you actually use third person characters in order to tell the story more clearly. And maybe sometimes people use third person characters to protect themselves from from
Exposure and whatever.
really like letting too much of their own personal stuff out, or whatever. Like writing is hard. The thing I had to get over with my student, the first session that we had on writing was like, how do you write like emotionally, and like other people around you are like your friends, and like and like
without offending
maybe
them.
like are all good. Not even about offending, like you're just like putting yourself out there, and like maybe to like all these people that the first people who are going to hear this is like your roommates and your friends and like your partner, and like it's hard sometimes to say what you want to say in a song because maybe you haven't said it to the people yet. And
Yeah.
so it's like I've been in this situation where I wanted to like talk, but like I didn't really want to talk that clearly about my life publicly or whatever. And so we use a lot of metaphors and a lot of symbolism and imagery. And so but there's like the lyric part you can talk about in teaching for like weeks and weeks and weeks, because it's like the phrasing, like learning how to sing and play at the same time, learning how to like sing in there's so many different like facets of songwriting, from like the first it's like the chord changes and like the melodies for the vocals to go over, and like like write how to write a verse, how to write a chorus, how to write a bridge, how to like tie these things together in a way that makes sense harmonically, like, and then how to like write your lyrics, how to make them, how to be able to sing them and like play and stay in rhythm, like it's like time training, metronome training, where you're like now have to like metronome train your playing and metronome train your singing, and like a lot of times teaching like phrasing, like melodic phrasing, and so then and of course there's the harmony on top of that, and so there's just all these tiny elements that go into writing a great song, like for writing making a chorus catchy, like knowing how to like do an intro and knowing how to do an outro, like knowing like what I mean it could be anything, but like what the standard like form of like a regular pop song or whatever, there's so much about songwriting, and so yeah, like getting to teach it has definitely like made me like much more self-aware, like hyper aware when I'm writing, to address every single one of these, elements from a thorough place, like not to be like lazy about anything, not to like, I went for an easy rhyme, but like it takes the listener out of like the story and like jars them out, and now like they're thinking about something else or whatever because you put in a lazy rhyme that didn't like that didn't wasn't like subtle enough or whatever.
So when do you find the time to start like playing them at shows, right? Like, so how do you
New
go?
songs,
Yeah. So like, okay, I'm ready to bust it.
rehearsal.
Right? It's all through rehearsal, and then you're
Yeah,
like, all right,
we have a bunch of rehearsals coming up before tour, and it's like basically like we'll split up that time. Sometimes you need to lobby for your song, to be like, hey, can we do you know the Titans today? I really want to do this song called The Titans coming up. It's my number one thing that I hope we do, and also Tantalize, which is an Electron song. We've been playing it for 10 years. I made a version for the Biscuits, and I'd love for us to start playing it as soon as possible. And so, we got this tour coming
yep.
up starting on the June
Mhm.
3rd or 4th in Atlanta. And it goes all the way through, the Southeast, Atlanta and Asheville and Raleigh, Charlotte before Asheville, and then Bonnaroo, all good, and then up into the Northeast and out into the Midwest with Electric Forest, and then back
And
into the
you're
Northeast.
coming on to the Mish. You're coming to the Mish, baby.
Yeah, and then we'll be.
Mish Wonka.
I'm sad that we didn't get to talk about your big viral moment, because I feel like I feel like for my fans, if they get this far into this podcast ever, if I'm correct, you did the chairs.
I am the chair guy, but here's the beautiful thing about the internet is I can turn this bad boy into a reel and we can turn it right out to it, right? But
Wait,
yeah,
so you're the chair guy. I just want like I feel like
I'm 1,000% the chair guy. I also
so
folded a
you're
post.
like a vigilante. You're like a
I'm a fuck the system guy, Brownie. I hated that they were
was
cap.
that even the system? Like, is that how the system's supposed to go? Or people
It's
supposed to wait.
not how the system was supposed to go. So what I hated was that people were trying to capitalize off of the backs of bands and away from collectors and true fans so that they could essentially flip these things, right? So they'll go set an empty chair, they'll buy a poster, they'll sell it for 5 times the value in line. They don't give a shit, right? And for
They're
me,
flipping it from line. So they're
yeah,
like getting there early, leaving
but
their
they don't
chair
even
there,
fucking sit there. They just leave a chair, fucking leave, come back, flip the poster.
get their poster, flip it. Oh, are they going in their spot though?
So they go back to their empty chair to wherever they left it. Then they grab a poster, and that's why they come and leave them early
Do
because
they
they're
sell the spot though? Are they selling the
no,
spot?
they don't sell the spot.
They're
What they do,
flipping the poster.
they're flipping the poster. And so, like, limited runs, like, sometimes there's only 20 foils or whatever the fuck it is. And because some asshole left a chair or whatever, like, it's bullshit, right? And for me, like, I love this community. I love all of our fans. We're always going to have, it's like sports fans, right? Like, you're going to,
We need to back up for some people are going to be like, what the fuck are these guys talking about right now? There was a Billy String show. There was a line of chairs that were saving people spots to go into the show, and there's a viral video of you coming down the line and chucking the chairs out of the way, right? And I think this this what led to you having a podcast? Whatever it is
yeah,
brilliant. That you're like the hot tour girl of like chair throwing, you
yeah,
know?
essentially, that is what fucking happened. So I had folded a poster in Asheville, and people were like, "What the fuck?" I folded it, put it in my back pocket, and just like walked away with a maniacal laugh. Nobody knew who I was at that point. Had no fucking clue.
You
There,
were you were the poster folder.
yes, and
Oh
so
wow! So you've had multiple viral moments.
yes, so then I folded that poster, and then fuck, god damn it, my fucking camera. Here, let me back out, and I'm just oh no, there it is. Okay,
There you
so
are.
yeah, so I folded the poster, and then what happened was Colorado's my home, right? So the Billy String show was happening in my backyard, and I was there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and there was already 25 chairs. Maybe 5 of them had people in it, and it was fucking bullshit, man. And so I did it, and then what happened was Frasco had reached out to me, and because I didn't say anything, I just like to look like this aggro 6'4", 300-pound dickhead. And Frasco's like, "What the fuck? Like, what's the reason? Like, what did you do this for?" So he had me on the World Saving podcast, and you know Andy, he's a fucking awesome dude, and I was just myself, I was genuine, and he's like, "Man, you need to do this." So I had this fucking wall in my basement, and I'm a talker, I'm a bullshitter. Anybody that knows me from the scene, I just like it, and I love it. And I love the music, I love the scene, I love advocating for people. I do love stirring the pot too, but I'm not just a fucking troll, right? And so, like, for me, I've been interviewed, like, Brownie, for me to interview you, that's like one of my fucking dreams, right? And like I would pay
Right.
money to be able to do that. And just because of these
Thank you.
like, it's fucking wild, man.
So
And
you just answered the question for people. What's the reason for this? You know what I
right,
mean? All
exactly.
right. Well, I gotta jump, but I've got a dinner reservation soon. But I appreciate you taking the time. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew uh, exactly how this phenomenon started, and if they have a memory of the dude just chucking chairs. I just figured personally that you were pissed that people were holding spots and like walking away and not being that, like just leaving their chairs there, and you were like a vigilante, like chair line. Did you take a better spot in the line?
So it's happened a few times now because I did it once at Fiddler's, and then Billy Strings had his own festival, and I wasn't going to do it because I didn't want to just be like the chair guy that fucking does it because everybody tags me and everything now all the time. But I was at Billy's festival in Renewal last summer, and there was somebody's like, "Man, there's already 55 chairs in line, and it's night zero." So I didn't throw them that time, and I made sure nobody was recording, but I gently relocated them, and I moved everyone that was in line up, and then I got to the back of the line of the people that were already there. So I just like, I'm a man of the people. I'm not here to just be a
I
dick, but
like that. You did like a little musical chairs.
yeah, a
A
thousand
little
percent
with the chair.
with the chair.
Yeah, you were musical chairing the chair. All right, well, appreciate that, man. Thanks for taking the time to talk and learn a little bit more about the beginnings of the biscuits and the current state. And
And you're fucking DJing, man. I'm super stoked. I will be at all those shows at the Mish, and hopefully I can get out to one of the shows before then. Thanks for
great.
everything, Tom.
Thanks, Kodi.
Take it easy, bud.
Peace.